stationary or hindi gumagalaw ang mga bagay na hindi natin ginagalaw? Have you ever wondered why our new shoes squeak when we rub it against the floor? Everything around us is affected by a force we call friction. Friction is a force that opposes motion. In this video, you will infer why an object moving along a surface eventually slows down and stops, describe friction and its kinds, investigate the factors affecting frictional force, describe how friction affects the movement of an object, explain the effects of friction, and identify the desirable and undesirable effects of friction to objects and people. To see how much you already know about friction, let's try these easy questions. Get a pen and paper now to write down your answers for checking later. You can pause the video to read each question. Are you ready? Let's begin! Identify what is asked or described in each item, then choose the letter of your choice. Number 1. What do you think will happen to a ball after it is kicked on a grassy field? A. It will disappear. B. It will stay at rest. C. It will continue moving. Or D. It will move, slow down, then stop. Number 2. In which of the following surfaces will an object roll or move faster? A. Sand. B. Glass. C. Gravel. D. Grassy area. Number 3. Which of the following words will make the statement correct? You don't need to constantly push or pull an object for it to move or blank. A. Fly. B. Disappear. C. Roll. D. Stop. Number 4. What do you call the force that opposes motion? A. Applied. B. Friction. C. Magnetic. D. Normal. Number 5. In which of the following conditions is friction increased? A. Applying floor wax on the floor. B. Applying oil on the surface of a table. C. Presence of spikes on motorcycle wheels. Or D. Putting lubricants on the chains of motorcycles. Before we dive into our activities on friction, let's guess these keywords that we're going to meet along the way. Rearrange the jumbled letters to form the word described. Number 1. It is the force that causes moving objects along a surface to slow down and eventually stop. Number 2. It is a kind of friction that prevents a stationary object from moving against a surface. Number 3. It is the force that prevents a moving object from moving. Number 4. It is a type of kinetic friction when an object rolls over a surface. Number 5. It is a type of friction when two objects slide against one another, also called dry friction. For our first activity, we will discover what friction is, how it affects objects, and its different types. For our first activity, we are going to need the following material. First, a D-dry cell or any battery available in your home. A board or any board that is flat, smooth, and light. Third, a stack of books. For the first setup, we are going to place the board on top of a flat surface for stability. Then, we are going to put the D-dry cell on top of the board. Please observe what's happening or what will happen in this setup. Did the battery move? Please take note. For the second setup, we are going to make use of the stack of books and place one side of the board on top of it to make it elevated. Now, we are going to put the battery on top of one end of the board. If nothing happens to the battery, we will slowly elevate one side of the board until something happens. Please observe. Did you see that? Let's do it again. Okay, for the third setup, still using this board and the stack of books, we are going to put the battery on its side. Okay, please observe what will happen to the battery when we release it. Did you see that? Let's do it again and please take note your observations. Did you get that? Please write your observations and let's answer the guide questions on the slides. For the following guide questions, please do not forget to write your answers in your activity notebook. You can pause the video to give you time to answer. Number 1. What keeps the battery on the board? Number 2. What made the battery stop sliding in procedure 2? Number 3. In which setup does the battery move down faster? Sliding or rolling? Why? Number 4. Which parts of the battery and the board are in contact with each other? Number 5. Is friction present between the surface of the board and the base of the battery? Why do you say so? Keep this in mind. Static friction occurs in stationary objects or objects at rest. It is a kind of friction that prevents an object from moving against a surface. Kinetic friction is the force that prevents a moving object from moving. Rolling friction is a type of kinetic friction when an object rolls over a surface. Examples of these are the wheels of vehicles in contact with the road. Sliding friction, also called dry friction, is when two objects rub or slides against each other. There is greater friction in sliding than in rolling. To apply what you've learned so far, decide if the following are static, sliding, or rolling friction. Number 1. A man standing on the ground. Number 2. A table pushed across the room. Number 3. The wheels of a traveling vehicle. Number 4. A girl skateboarding on the park. Number 5. A stationary chair on the floor. Congratulations mga bata! We're done with our first activity. You have already defined what friction is and observed how it affects objects. Sa pangalawa natin activity, we're going to observe and discover how friction is affected by different factors. For the second activity, we're going to need the following materials. First, a tea-dry cell. Second, a rubber ball. Third, a retractable pen. And fourth, a meter stick. If a meter stick is not available in your homes, you can make use of other devices that can measure length. For the first part, we're going to observe how friction is affected by the force exerted by the object. We are going to make use of the rubber ball and the dry cell. For the first setup, we are going to lay the battery on its side on the tile floor. Then, using the retractable pen, we are going to make it move. Once the battery stops moving, we're going to measure how far it traveled from the starting position and we're going to mark its last position. Now, we can measure the distance it traveled. It traveled 27.5 centimeters. Please take note your measurement on your notebooks. For the second setup, we're going to make use of a rubber ball. We're going to make it move as well using the retractable pen. Make sure to mark the starting point of the rubber ball so that you can measure how far it traveled later. We can see that the rubber ball traveled 29.5 centimeters from the starting position. Please take note of that in your notebook so that you can answer the guide questions on the slide. We are going to lay the battery on its side on the tile floor. Then, Using the retractable pen, we are going to make it move. Once the battery stops moving, we're going to measure how far it traveled from the starting position, and we're going to mark its last position. Now, we can measure the distance it traveled. It traveled 27.5 centimeters. Please take note your measurement on your notebooks. For the second setup, we're going to make use of a rough surface using this floor in the corridor. Again, we're going to put the battery on its side, and then we're going to mark the starting position of the battery. Still using the retractable pen, we're going to make the battery move. Once the battery stopped moving, we're going to mark the place where it stopped. This time, the battery moved 7.5 centimeters. Please take note of that in your observations. To see how much you learned on the second activity, let's try these easy questions. Get a pen and paper now to write down your answers for checking later. Are you ready? Let's begin. For the following guide questions, please do not forget to write down your answers in your activity notebook. You can pause the video to give you time to answer. Number 1. Comparing the battery and the rubber ball, which of the two rolled farther? Why? Number 2. How does the weight of the object affect the friction it has with the surface? Number 3. Comparing the tiled floor and the rough floor, in which floor did the battery travel farther? Why? Number 4. How does the type of surface affect the frictional force? Keep this in mind. Weight of object or the force it applies on the surface. The amount of force pressing objects in contact increases or decreases frictional force. The greater the weight, the greater the frictional force. In terms of the types of surface, the texture of a surface affects the distance traveled by moving objects. The smoother the texture, the lesser the friction. The rougher the texture, the greater the friction. To apply what you've learned, indicate if the following scenarios have more friction or less friction. Write the answer in your activity notebook. You can pause the video to give you time to read. Number 1. The base of a heavy cabinet on the floor. Number 2. A worn shoes without spikes on tiled floor. Number 3. Bare feet on wet floor. Number 4. An inflatable bed on cement floor. Number 5. A log of wood on the forest floor. For the third activity, decide if the following situations show desirable or undesirable effects of friction on objects and people, then explain why. You can pause the video to copy the table shown. Number 1. A man applying brakes on his car. Number 2. Cleaning or mopping the floor. Number 3. Writing in a paper using a pencil or pen. Number 4. Lubricating the machines of vehicles. Number 5. Wearing and tearing of slippers and shoes. For the following guide questions, please do not forget to write down your answers in your activity notebook. You can pause the video to give you time to answer. Number 1. When does friction become beneficial to humans? Number 2. When does friction become not beneficial to humans? To apply what you've learned, decide if the following scenarios are beneficial or not beneficial effects of friction. Number 1. Wearing and tearing of shoes. Number 2. Hitting the brakes to stop the vehicle. Number 3. Walking across the floor. Number 4. Running around the track. Number 5. Slipping on wet floor. To help you summarize and reflect on what you've learned on this video, please accomplish the following sentence prompts. To strengthen what you have learned in this video, Please perform the following task. Make an advertisement selling a product of your choice to increase friction, whether it be through a video, poster, or jingle. To get to know the terms more, remember our word bank. Friction is the force that opposes motion. It causes an object that moves along a surface to slow down and eventually stop. Static friction occurs in stationary objects or objects at rest. It is a kind of friction that prevents an object from moving against a surface. Kinetic friction is the force that prevents a moving object from moving. Rolling friction is a type of kinetic friction when an object rolls over a surface. Sliding friction, also called drive friction, is when two objects rub or slides against each other. Let's test your learnings. Get a pen and paper and let's answer the post test. You can pause the video and each question to give you time to think. Identify what is asked or described in each item, then choose the letter of your choice. Number 1. What do you think will happen to a ball after it is kicked on a grassy field? A. It will disappear. B. It will stay at rest. C. It will continue moving. D. It will move, slow down, then stop. Number 2. In which of the following surfaces will an object roll or move faster? A. Glass. B. Sand. C. Gravel. D. Grassy area. Number 3. In which of the following surfaces will a moving object reach the shortest distance before it stops? A. Tiles. B. Glass. C. Sand. D. Cemented floor. Number 4. Which of the following statements is or are correct? 1. All objects moving on a specific surface stop at different rates. 2. A ball will either slow down or stop after it is kicked on a field. 3. There is no force required to move an object. A. 1 and 2 only. B. 1 and 3 only. C. 2 and 3 only. D. 1, 2, and 3. Number 5. Which of the following words will make the statement correct? You don't need to constantly push or pull an object for it to move blank. A. Disappear. B. Fly. C. Roll. D. Stop. Number 6. What do you call the force that opposes motion? A. Applied. B. Friction. C. Magnetic. D. Normal. Number 7. Which of the following statements is not true about friction? A. Friction resists motion. B. Friction is a constant force. C. Friction can be static or kinetic. D. Friction speeds up motion of objects. Number 8. Which of the following has the strongest type of friction? A. Kinetic. B. Rolling. C. Sliding. D. Static. 9. In which of the following conditions is friction increased? A. Applying floor wax on the floor. B. Applying oil on a surface of table. C. Presence of spikes on motorcycle wheels. D. Putting lubricants on the chains of motorcycles. Number 10. Which of the following statements about kinetic friction is not true? A. Its types are rolling and sliding. B. It is the weakest type of friction. C. It is the strongest type of friction. D. It is a force that resists motion of moving objects. Congratulations! You just finished the video lesson on friction.